One of my favorite things about finishing the book was the fact that Soo Jin and Linda decided that the last chapter would be about Asian joy and celebration, that you can actually reclaim your story with trauma healing. And can you tell me more about that? Like, how can we have more Asian joy and celebration in our narrative?
Hi everyone, again. Welcome. I'm Joanna Belfer. I'm the owner of Bel Canto Books here inside of Kubo LD. And I wanted to say really quickly, because I know some folks were confused about, like, what's Bel Canto, what's Kubo? So Bel Canto Books is my bookstore. We own two locations, right? It's been a little bit of a transition, but we own 2 locations as of right now. We are in the process of opening a 3rd location back on 4th Street where our other store was, but we'll be opening our own freestanding store this spring. Kubo here is a Filipinx-led creative collective. So there's lots of different vendors in the space. Flip Family, which does programming for families and kids. If you got here early, which I know some folks did, you got to see the Filipino martial arts class that meets here twice a week. We do have a full roster of events, and so there's an event sign on that book bench back there. But we are here for this lovely team of amazing women. We're super excited to be hosting this launch party for Where I Belong by Soo Jin Lee and Linda Yoon, and just so thrilled by this tremendous achievement. I'm going to read just a little bit of their bios, but I feel like everybody already knows them. Some really quick housekeeping things. One more time, if you don't know where the restroom is, through the white door to the right. Checkout is here. So Kim is here. She'll be here all night too. Or not all night. She lives here at the bookstore. She'll be here for our event. So if you would like to purchase anything once we end, you're welcome to do so, and we'll do a book signing with the authors afterwards. I'm like, what else am I supposed to tell people?
There's snacks.
Oh, there's snacks. So that's my husband, Phil. Hi, Phil. He's my good, long-suffering husband who does all of our, he's happy that we're not doing pop-up days anymore because he used to have to carry all the books everywhere. But there is a snacks table behind him there. And Linda and Soo Jin very wonderfully brought that for us to share, so please enjoy that. Anything else? I think that's it. Okay, so I'm just going to read their bios, and then I'm going to turn it over to Helen. Soo Jin Lee is a licensed marriage and family therapist, executive director of Yellow Chair Collective, and co-founder of Entwine Community. As a previously undocumented Asian immigrant who struggled to access mental health care, she brings a unique perspective to her role. She has a degree in fine arts, and creativity plays an essential role in her personal and therapeutic process. When she's not spending quality time with her family, she can often be found exploring nature, on a hiking trail, or offering expert guidance in psychotherapy to individuals and groups alike. Welcome, Soo Jin.
Thank you.
Linda Yoon is also a licensed therapist and a social worker who has dedicated her career to helping people along their healing journey to find a sense of belonging. As a survivor of CPTSD and having received a late adult diagnosis of ADHD, Linda is passionate about serving Asian American communities, survivors of violence, and those who are neurodivergent. Growing up, Linda was drawn to the color yellow, which symbolizes resilience, joy, and hope. This deep personal connection inspired her to name her founding practice Yellow Chair Collective. So I was like, ooh, I like learning these little tidbits. She's also a co-founder of Entwine, a 501c3 nonprofit supporting Asian and Asian American mental health. And she currently resides in Los Angeles with her spouse, Matthew. Hi, Matthew. And her furry companion, Minnie, who has been by her side for 18 years. I'm like, where's Minnie? Next time. Welcome, Linda. And today we have an extra special treat because we have Helen Garcia with us.
Hi, everyone.
And Helen is a mental health therapist and the host of the Yellow Chair Collective, an Asian American mental health podcast based in Los Angeles. She is the oldest daughter of a Filipino American immigrant family. Her mental health treatment specialty is working with creative professionals around the areas of trauma recovery, healing family wounds, and reframing anxious thoughts. Like, let's talk more later. In her spare time, she writes and records, is that right, Mindset minimalism content on her blog, consciousminimalism.com. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you.
So I'm going to turn it over to Helen, who's going to take over hosting duties. So we'll have other conversation and Q&A. We'll have Q&A with all of you all at the end, and then, as I said, the very, very end, book signing and party. So enjoy.
All right, let's get this show on the road. So Linda and Soo Jin asked me to do some icebreaker questions. So I feel like Joanna already answered why we named it Yellow Chair, but icebreaker question. Linda and Soo Jin, if I met you a year from now, what would you be celebrating?
So first of all, my dog is 18. She's gonna be almost 19 a year from now. I'll definitely celebrate that. And it will be a year anniversary of our book. We will have a paperback and also buy that. Right now, there's only hardcover, but yeah, so a year from now, I'll celebrate those.
A year from now, well, I also have a dog, so I think I have to highlight our dog too, Mung. He's turning 8 this year, and so next year he's turning 9. Not as significant as Mimi, but they're besties. Well, they kind of tolerate each other, but we love that they tolerate each other, so we want to keep it that way. And of course, we'll be celebrating the 1 year of the book. My husband is here with me today. It's almost his birthday. I won't say how old he's turning. He's shaking his head. But we will also be celebrating that as well.
So I'm about to start asking questions about the book, but before I ask questions, I really want to acknowledge the transformation that I've personally gone through being able to work at Yellow Chair. When I entered Yellow Chair, I had this gleaming, soaking, dripping sense that I had to be perfect all the time. And I think this book just symbolizes what it's like to work for Soo Jin and Linda. They're just so humble and open and expressive to sharing responsibility that I'm getting emotional, like even being here with you today. And it's a privilege that I get to host this. So I'm excited to have them share their stories. So,
Helen, it's such a privilege to work with you. Really, it's our honor that you are our host today. And I really want to promote our podcast, the host of our Yellow Chair Collective podcast. If you are listening to her voice right now, it is amazing. And so you can listen to that all day if you would like.
okay, so first question, tell me about how you started writing the book and why the book even came to be.
Yeah. So in the midst of COVID, it took us about 3 years to get the book to where it is today. And it was really at the height of a pandemic. There were so much hatred and violence that was taking place in our community. And we realized that a lot of these isolation had to be met with community work. And a lot of communities were shutting down. And so we were trying to create a lot of online spaces where we can all talk to each other. And it wasn't just for our clients as therapists, but it was really for us too, because we needed the community. We felt like we needed that support. And so we began creating all of these community spaces and support groups, as well as just one-off workshops for healers and other professionals to be able to gather and just journey together. And we were really, really fortunate because one of a book agent had saw that we were doing this work and approached us and said, I think what you're doing should be in a book format. I can just read it like a chapter already. And Linda and I both talked about maybe, when we retire, we'll write a book about our journey and our work. But when the opportunity arose, we thought, we are really isolated. And this is going to be another tool that people can take where they can feel like, okay, I can open this and read people's stories. I don't even have to understand all of the psychoeducational portion, but read other people's stories and know that I'm not alone in the journey. And so then the book kind of came to be.
I think Soo Jin answered all the
She's always like this.
I'm not sure if I can add anything. Yes, it was definitely a height of a lot going on, a lot of hate, a lot of isolation, and we were offering no cost, free, like support groups. Just come, share your feelings, let's be together. And there was so much interest coming in, and people keep asking, can you do more? And we will get people from all over the US and even beyond US sometimes too, like Australia, Europe. They just feel like being Asian and being in during this pandemic time, it just felt so unsafe, and they need a place that they can feel seen and feel okay, and it just makes sense out of what's going on. And that's really where we came out. As therapists, we do serve clients right now in California, in New York, but we are limited to our license. So the reason why we did support group was that it's not therapy group, it's support. So we can reach people who are reaching out to us from like all over the place. And also wanted to create a tool, right? A book that they can read and they can feel seen. Even it's not through therapy services, right? Even they cannot make to support groups or community groups that we have, or even they don't, or more so like they don't have that space in their own community, which we met a lot of. Like we had Asian people reaching out from Wisconsin, like rural Oregon, I don't have anybody. And they really found support group really healing, and yeah, we want to make that into a book.
So I think what Linda was saying is really important in the way that you all now have a book and are going to be journeying, right? We really wanted it to feel like you're in the support group in a different way, right? It's a different element that we've taken that support group into a book format. That's why there's so many different elements in the book and not just the educational portions. And the storytelling in the book was a very important part that we really wanted to highlight, because that's what gave people that feeling that I'm not alone. That's what brought the real sense of healing and vulnerability. And so we hope that you all enjoy the book and enter into a space of vulnerability with yourselves as much as the people that have shared in the book.
I think that when it comes to this entire theme of what it means to be Asian American, we don't see a lot of that in our culture. And so I'd love for you to unpack, Soo Jin and Linda, because I've heard you talk about this before, that our understanding of trauma healing and Asian American is very limited in society. And so I'd love you to unpack those terms for me.
I think we understood going into the first chapter that we had to kind of create defining things and terminology, especially because we're saying we're trying to embrace Asian American identity. We're trying to heal trauma through this process. And I really hated it. It was not my favorite part of the writing. So I'll let you read the drier parts, but I think it's the drier parts. But I thought it was also important that we kind of have a blanket understanding of what we're entering ourselves into, right? So I'm going to share a little bit of like the personal journey portion, and that's not in the book actually, so you can a little glimpse more.
Extra.
Yeah, extra. So for me, defining Asian American for myself personally was really difficult because as Joanna had introduced me, I grew up as an undocumented immigrant, which meant to claim that I was any kind of Asian or American, but the latter part, right, the American piece, was really difficult for me. I thought that the defining term of being an American meant that you had to have a citizenship. And so me and my family do not belong to this box. And so how can I claim that I'm an American when everything else in the society, in media, is telling me that I don't belong here? that I am not supposed to be American. I don't look like one, but I have to carry this secret, right? And I'm supposed to act like one, that I belong here, right? And so it was a journey for me to begin to realize that what America really stands for and what it means to be an American carries a lot more deeply than this political term American. And I think that's important to maybe mention in this moment in whatever's happening around the world right now too, right? Is how we want to define ourselves to be and why we do that. And part of the why I did that is that trauma healing piece, is to be able to say, okay, there's a lot of ways that I could not piece together what external messages were given to me and my internal being was saying was not matching. And this is a broad way that I wanted to put what trauma means to us. Because there's so many medical ways that we can define trauma, but this is how I understand it to be, because this was my personal experience of it. And this is what I'm hearing from the people that I was working with. Right? They don't care for what trauma really means in the medical world, right? But what I'm feeling, what I've really experienced, it's difficult to define, and I don't quite understand it. I can't grasp at it, right? And so that disalignment is what we're talking about when we're talking about trauma.
Linda, I'd love for you to speak about how you felt mislabeled and misjudged as a Asian American kid in school. Like you write about this in the book, that you weren't really recognized for your ADHD diagnosis until later in life, and I'd love for you to speak about that experience.
Alright, so we're going to model minor here. Before that, I do want to add a little bit. So in the book, because we have learned, even with our staff, our clients, that like Asian American, Korean, Filipino, like there's so many different ways that people identify. And even you may have lived in America for a long time. So there are some Asians like, I don't feel like American. I don't call myself American. So just to make it easy to speak to like Asians in America, we do address that. We use Asian American term kind of broadly to identify Asians in America. So that was something that I want to add. Not everybody in the book identify that, and then some people do explicitly say that as well. In terms for me, I immigrated when I was about 11 years old, when my parents, my dad got a job, and we immigrated to San Diego, and that's where I grew up. And there were very few kids in the neighborhood at the time, like Asian kids. It was very predominantly white neighborhood. And other Korean immigrant kids who came before me were very doing well in school, very well. Like they learned English very fast. So my teacher had this expectation that, oh, just like other Korean immigrant kids, she's gonna, pick up things really quickly and do very well. In math, I did, because I was doing like what I was learning in first grade in my fourth grade class in the US. I was like, I learned this in my first grade. Like, I didn't do this here. But in terms of actual like learning English and the other languages, that came a lot harder for me, and that also has to do with I also learned Korean very late. I spoke like my parents were really worried that I was speaking late. There were concerns, but somehow I still learned, but I always sounded a little different. That later I suspected some speech impediment, but which I didn't know, and that wasn't something that exists in Korea. Like you don't talk about it. We didn't really know. But I remember just being made fun of by other kids, like, oh, why do you speak that way? Like, you don't know how to speak Korean. And I came to US, I'm learning English, I don't know how to speak English, and forgetting Korean. And there are some spaces that I felt like I didn't speak either Korean or English as well. So when I was not really learning English fast and I was not really catching up. My teacher had a meeting with my parents and just kind of said I'm not like other Korean kids or other East Asian kids particularly, that something must be wrong with me, or it was more like, oh, you must be not doing your job at home. Or like it's kind of like implying that I must be lazy, not trying, like I have, all Asian kids are smart kind of impression, but like why others not performing. That got my parents really, really upset. And I had a tutor before, but they got me like multiple tutors. Multiple tutors, and also kind of micromanaging now, like, oh, did you finish your homework? It was not like it wasn't there, it just got really, really a lot more. And I just took that as the comments my teachers made, and like also my parents, they just kind of blamed that on me, like, you're not trying hard, like, I'm giving you all these resources. Like, my parents did try, like, I had an English tutor, they did check my homework, so, yeah, that was, I didn't know what was going on until later, almost in my 30s, getting the diagnosis, because that was not even something that I could even think about back then. Back in the 90s, 80s, girls didn't have ADHD. I mean, Asian kids do not have ADHD, East Asian kids did not have ADHD or learning disability. That wasn't even something that is suspected. If you're, East Asian immigrant kid, or even South Asian immigrant kid too, like, you just didn't try. That was how it was looked at. So I just thought, like, oh, I'm not trying enough. So I just self-blame myself. But by high school, I realized that I'm spending a lot more time than my peers on homework or studying for material for tests, and something started to click in me, like something isn't right. Like something I need something more support. So yeah, so that was a little bit of a journey.
You both talk about this like assumption that people make about you, that things should be easy. Like, you're Asian American, things should come easy to you, and I'm looking at the crowd, and a lot of us identify as Asian American. And like, can you speak to that, like, when I'm thinking about Soo Jin and Linda, I think about people who see beyond the stereotype. Like, I remember, personal story, and then I'm gonna ask the question. But when I first met Soo Jin, she said to me, Helen, as an Asian American, I do recognize that you put a standard on yourself to be excellent, but you don't have to do that here. And I noticed with the both of you that you already see that in the way that people come to work, or the way clients come to work. And so can you speak to how your experiences have allowed you to see Asian American clients in a deeper way?
I feel like there's a lot of question in that one question. That's a hard question. But the way that we approached our clients, I feel like we were going on this parallel journey for a while of self-discovery, and then to be able to discover together what it means to live as Asian in America, what it means to be a child of immigrant for many of the clients that were saying that they identify as child of immigrant or immigrant themselves. Linda came at the age of 11, and so did I, actually. We met later in life, but we have shared so many of our moments of immigration story and immigration trauma story in particular. And I think that's what also bonded us together too. There's so much trauma bonding that happens at workplaces, right? Especially if you are a pre-licensed, like just trying to, get your hours, and there's trauma all around you, and you're a traumatized person yourself. And so we're all trying to discover ourselves, right? And how do we belong in this space where everyone seems to be suffering in one way or another, but no one actually is able to pinpoint to what that suffering looks like, right? I see some nodding heads, and that's how I felt. I felt like there was something like that is not exactly telling me what is going on for me and my family. I remember when I was in school getting my master's for therapy, there was a family class, so family therapy class in particular, and there's a lot of different modalities and theoretical models that you learn in that class. And one of my friend who was an international student from Asia, and she had told me, like, this class is the one thing I'm gonna fail. Like, I do not get it. I can't do it. And I completely, for the first time, understood. You're right. This whole model of whatever they're trying to teach us, we don't understand it because we see family differently. We experience family differently. And the text does not display that. It has very small elements of cultural competency, is what they like to call it, but it does not define, it does not help process real families that I thought was real family, right? With the people that I lived with the people that I was seeing, with the people that I was talking to, all my friends, families, right? Family, friends, and my community. So nothing was speaking to my community. And so Linda and I got talking a lot about this particular topic. And sometimes we would get philosophical, like, what is life? What is family? And other times it would be pretty concrete complaints, right? Like what we're being asked to do at our workplace, we will write that that's what we did, but we really can't do that with the people that are sitting in front of us because they will never get it. And they probably won't come back to therapy. And so then we began the journey of kind of figuring out, like, okay, how do we want to think about trauma differently? Because the way that I explained it earlier, right? And then how do we want to see, like, family dynamic differently? And then, of course, intergenerational trauma is now big, but when we were studying, it really wasn't. That wasn't even a term that was in our school. Can you believe? Right? It wasn't talked about. And when we began to really understand those smaller pieces that came together into this large picture of our own identity and understanding, then we were like, oh, okay, I think this is how we can begin to heal ourselves and our community and the people that are sitting in front of us.
I don't remember the question anymore.
The question was, as Asian Americans, we really pride ourselves in excellence and perfection. And like, I was telling a story about how, like, you never made me feel like I had to meet that stereotype. And so my question is, like, when you're meeting with Asian American clients, what do you see that a non-culturally competent Asian American therapist may not see?
Well, I like to share my story. First time I ever met with a therapist. I think I was about 15. So in the book, I just share about my family dynamic. I grew up in a family violence home, and violence was something that I experienced a lot. And I confided into one of my youth leader at church, and she didn't know what to do, and she tried to convince me to go to therapy. And she found this therapist who were doing at very low cost, and I went to see her. But at this time, there was really there was no Asian therapist. There was no non-white therapist. There was no just personal color therapist. So I just got what I got. And she met really well, the therapist I saw. She had her master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And she had this very kind voice and trying to understand me. But she just was puzzled talking about my family dynamic. And she, kindly kind of asking, she's trying to understand, but she keep asking me, like, why, why? Like, why would your parents say that to me? Like, why would your parent, mom will, do that? Like, she just was so confused. And I just found myself, I'm only 15, I don't know why. Like, I cannot explain to you, like, I don't understand. I just, I had 3 sessions, I just felt like I was wasting my time. Like, I was even more confused, is this what therapy is, right? And that left me very, lose hope perhaps at the time, because there's like, therapy cannot even help. Like, who can help me and my family? So I did not want to be a therapist for the longest time. It's kind of funny how it led me to be a therapist now. Yes, and also years before that, therapists is just stigmatized thing anyways to go in the first place. I didn't want to be there. My youth, a leader just like, you should, really seek out help. So I just went because she was talking to me about it and wouldn't let it go. But years before, something that lasts with me a lot is that when there was so much chaos going on in my family, and my little sister heard this thing, therapy, for the first time from her white friends. And she told my dad, like, we're in this chaos all the time. Like, my friend, Amy told me that their family went to therapy and that helped. Like, why can't we just try therapy instead of you keep yelling at us, throwing things at us? And that got him even angrier, more upset. And looking back, it was painful memory, but looking back, I find it kind of funny because my dad yelled back that you have too many white friends. You should have more Asian friends. So, it's not, therapy is nothing. But like, that really made me internalize, like, oh, therapy is such a shameful thing. Like, that's not something you should ever say out loud, that we need help. So like, those memories building up and going to therapists, finally seeing a therapist and having that kind of experience, that was very, I wouldn't say it was traumatizing, it was just very frustrating experience for a high schooler. And I just thought that was therapy for the longest time. And, I didn't see any therapists who looked like me or saw anybody who served the community. At the time, at least. And that became a little bit of driving force for me later when I decided to go into be a therapist. Like, how do we serve our community, like, that I understand? Sometimes it became a barrier because I would identify way too much with my dynamics I do, and I get just lost in it. But yeah, knowing that there wasn't a lot of resources and we needed something that works for our families, that works for me, that understands our culture, our family dynamic, and some things just do not translate. Yeah.
How much time do we have? I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions, and then we'll go into Q&A. But when I was reading this book, I felt like I was also a collaborator in the book because there's so much journaling prompts and there are collaboration exercises. But I'd love to hear more about the artistic choice of putting in personal stories. Like, there are people here, Carrie's story is in there, Salman's story is in there. And then after you tell stories, there are journaling prompts about rediscovering yourself. And I'm curious as to, like, tell me more about that decision.
And I think I mentioned this earlier as well. We wrote this book as an extension of an experience of being in a support group. And so to us, it was really important that you read about other people's stories and that you see yourself being reflected on these stories. Or if you don't, that you learn from other people's stories, right? And so it was important for us to also, as part of the therapeutic process and healing journey, that you witness the vulnerability that takes place in that support group. And that was the synergy that we felt in our group. It was when people were sharing and nodding, and they were like, yes, I hear you, I see you, and I relate to you. That's the synergy it created in creating other people to be able to reflect deeply on their own stories. Because oftentimes, I think growing up, for many Asian households, and Linda mentions about her experience, and I've talked about my own personal journey of growing up undocumented too, right? Is we learn to have this defensive wall where it's not about other people, but really just for me to not enter into that space of vulnerability. Because when I do, maybe I don't know what's gonna come out of that. I might not be able to be functioning anymore. Or there's a deep hidden fear that we might discover that we don't want to discover. And so this wall that we've created, I think it helps to be able to see other people, stories, and their vulnerability, their lived experiences. When we see that light, that wall starts to get thinner so that we can enter into our own space of a deeper reflection. And so that was the choice that we made, that we had to have lots of stories in here, just like you would be hearing when you were sitting with a group of people.
Yeah, something may be different is a lot of times book like this will be psychoeducation, right? And then have a story to support that. We reverse that. We have personal stories and we are attacking the personal narratives and what may have happened and then giving the psychoeducation. We are here and now kind of approach that we like to do. And we felt like there's so much more to learn and so much more that we can relate to or just create that collaborative feeling, just reading people's stories. And then like, oh, from your story, this is what it was, you know, this is what might have happened. So kind of supporting that.
So we've been talking about trauma for about an hour. I want to shift to joy and celebration. The good news is that one of my favorite things about finishing the book was the fact that Soo Jin and Linda decided the last chapter would be about Asian joy and celebration, that you can actually reclaim your story with trauma healing. And can you tell me more about that? Like, how can we have more Asian joy and celebration in our narrative?
The first word actually that popped in my head was food. In a lot of ways, when we talk about trauma healing, of course, there's a lot of heaviness, there's a lot of grief, and there's a lot of sense of loss, there's a lot of misalignment. Yeah, there's a lot there that we have to work through and talk about. Trauma goes hand in hand also with joy and celebration too. I am very proud of my parents for all the intergenerational trauma they have put onto me, but also because I've learned how to live my life now. Like how to write this book, it wouldn't exist without them and everything that they have endured. And so to me and to us when we were talking about this, it was really important to know that there is everything that is a two side of the coin, right? Is that
Both sides of the same coin.
there we go. That one. That sometimes that will enter into a deep space of reflection and maybe despair even, talking about and going through our history, and that there is going to be a lot of sense of joy and things to celebrate as well. And the reason why food was the number one thing that came to my mind was there's so many mixed emotions when I think about certain types of food and my mom's cooking. There's a lot of sense of grief in it too, actually. And there's a lot of sense of celebration in it too. And so, you know, passing down recipes is going to be something that I'll try to work on. This year is kind of like something that I've been thinking about also as my mom is aging. And that was the one thing that in the beginning of the year I was thinking about to myself. And I think if I want to preserve my history, my family history as an immigrant, this is going to be one of the ways that I'm going to do it. And if I want to celebrate myself, this is going to be one of the ways I'm going to do it. If I am sad and grieving, this is the way I'm going to do it. It's going to be through food.
Just adding to Soo Jin's, it was so interesting when we called out for like trauma healing and celebration stories, most people related that to food. Most Asian people that we've interviewed, that you will see in our later chapters about reclaiming, they decide to allow time reclaiming really include food, and that really shows how much food is essential in our community, in our families. And just going back to the original question, why that's important is, I feel like a lot of people, a lot of clients that I interviewed, and myself too, there wasn't a lot of sense of like you can be proud to be Asian growing up as an immigrant or living in an area maybe you're not represented, or just the media that we grew up in the U.S. Like we didn't really have representation, and if we did, it was not something that we want to be, kind of like a joke sometimes, right? So there are just a lot of people that I work with and I also relate to. For growing up, there's almost a sense of shame of your own identity, of who you are. And that was part of the trauma healing that we had to do, and reclaiming, like, what does it mean to be Korean or Asian American, immigrant, right? And, there's research about it too, and what really helps you to reclaim that is joy, celebrating, reclaiming, and writing your narrative to be empowering, right? Being proud of your identity and really learning who you are, where you came from. So all of those journey of reclaiming, going to celebrating who you are, really helps you to become more full of who you are, right? So so that's what I would say, trauma healing and celebration is important.
All right, I think we're ready for Q&A if anyone has a question.
No hard questions. Easy questions, please.
I can just speak really loud. Will this, I didn't see that it was, but will it be on audio or audible for listening?
Oh, the book?
Yes.
Oh, yes, the book does have audible. We have funny story.
Linda loves the story, but it's okay. This is part of our reclaiming, so let's do the story.
So the story about Audible is that those of you who do not know, we didn't know either. So you have to audition for your Audible.
And audiobooks.
Yeah, to be Audible, to record your own Audible book. We didn't make it. So when you buy it, please do buy it. You have a very incredible voice actors who are reading the book.
Okay, Linda decided she was not going to audition for the book. And I, as part of my journey, right, I was like, this book is all about healing trauma, and wouldn't it be wonderful if I hear myself read the book and everyone else is hearing my voice, right? I was like, this is going to be part of my healing journey. And so I totally was like, okay, I'm going to practice and I'm going to do this right. And I was so nervous and so anxious. And being an immigrant, I was so conscious of like, I need to pronounce the words so, accurately, right? I can't mispronounce a word. And so I was speaking in a way that I would not be speaking like this, right? I was reading very slowly as if I'm reading to a first grader, and obviously I didn't make the cut.
But we did pick our own voice narrators. They're amazing. And we really love how audiobook did turn out. So please support.
Yeah. That was the one thing. So we were able to have the copies of our book a little bit earlier than the release, obviously, because we're the authors. But the one thing that we didn't get to hear was the audiobook until the release day. So that yesterday, that was the first thing I did. It was yesterday, as soon as the Audible sent me that, like, your pre-order is available. I was like, all right, let's listen to this. And I was pretty happy with the result. So
Was it an Asian?
yes, we all so we have 3 narrators, and they're all Asian Americans.
Did they resonate with the book?
Yes, one of the narrators actually personally wrote us that he choked up a couple times reading the book. That he has to kind of take it slow. So
he was also in charge of reading some of the personal stories.
Oh, David.
I think I have a question. So, what would you want to tell? So I'm so sorry for the traffic. I missed the first part of it.
Oh, don't worry.
What do you want to tell the younger generation, like the new immigrant and younger children? They will be the force of the future. What do you want to tell them about your story in the book? Hopefully not a hard question.
I think so. For the next generation, I really can't. I don't know what it's gonna look like, right? Things have changed so much in the last 3 years that when we started writing this book, that the thing, when it was released yesterday, and Linda and I were having a conversation around like, when are we gonna be able to have version 2? Because we need to update this book already. I am very hopeful that this is not going to be the only resource out there for the next generation. We had the privilege of being able to talk to many other authors or first-time authors that are Asian American that are going to be writing about their stories or about mental health in general, about well-being, about family dynamic, about all these different elements. And so I think for the next generation, this is just going to be one of very many ways that they will understand their identity and be proud of it, because there's going to be a lot more representation.
That's good.
I have a comment to add to that. So, how as you mentioned earlier, your stories about being Korean American or Asian American was shameful, amongst the, and it's just weird, not weird, but how like so much has changed due to media and access to internet. How like there's phases, right? Now the kids, the high school kids, have their anime phase, and then the Korean phase, the K-pop phase, the K-drama. Look at Netflix. Well, at least ours is all like 80% Korean drama, K-drama. It's not me, the kids. So saying there's so much hope, because what I hear now is that K-dramas involve the input mental health into the K-dramas.
Yes, yeah.
I don't watch them, so I heard my friend. But I think that that's so cool, because as you're talking about the trauma from the past, and as we're learning, the generation matters, cultural competency matters, and also how they came here matters. So you talk about the undocumented, and then the immigrant, and then you have refugees. Like here in Long Beach, you have the Cambodian. So it's a really interesting conversation as therapists, because you see it all. Like literally seen it all, the past, and the present, and the future. And I think this is for me being Filipino, I've never heard this place. My Chinese friend invited me here, so I just think this is all cool.
Thank you so much for being here. First of all, thank you so much for being here through the LA traffic, y'all. Like, you all showed up. Thank you. But with the media, I do want to add the little caveat of, I think it's great that they get to have this input of representation. And I think it's also very important for us to converse about them, because how they take that in and understand it is going to be unknown until we unfold that together, right? And we know that media can go both ways. Like, it could be very supportive, and at the same time, it can also be bringing other messages that we don't really endorse sometimes, right? So, yeah.
Speaking from experience as an Asian man, I realized how hard it is to understand trauma healing. But from your experience, I would want to know like how difficult it is with the clients that you work with, that Asian males or people that identify as Asian males. What's the barriers? Or how can you reach people who need this, like a lot of men who need these resources, that they don't understand how to get there, or the blocks are too insurmountable, seemingly from the environment or etc.
Yeah, we did. It was really hard to recruit men to share their stories. To be honest, we have to like beg our friends sometimes. I think your story has a good, it's valuable. But yeah, we were able to still at the end we were able to incorporate many male voices, Asian male voices, because that was important and that's really needed. And there's definitely a generation that is changing. Younger Asian men are more willing to speak. There's less stigma about therapy, stigma about mental health. They are more willing to be more vulnerable. But as they get older, the messages they grew up with. And there's many barriers there. Not just in language, but just talking about trauma, right? That is the word trauma itself for a lot of older generation or older men, Asian men. That's a term they don't want to identify with. I had male clients that just months of therapy will be just on like feeling just shameful. They ended up in front of me. That would be, and you can't even get anywhere because they are so ashamed that they are here because they needed help. So there are many barriers, and I think it also has to do with different generation as well. But the stigma is still pretty deep, and how men are socialized to interact to each other, right? Like it's not, it's not always about like emotional connection. It's more like activity, and they don't know what to do. Like I have male clients be like, I don't know what to do when my friend tell me about their feelings. Like you're able to talk about your feelings to me. Like let's talk about that, right? So yeah, those are some things that come to me right away.
Yeah, I think Linda just addressed some of the barriers, and to me, addressing this barrier starts with you sitting here asking these questions, right? Just look around. And I really, the fact that you're here today, that is already breaking the stigma. We have some resources, and Carrie's sitting right here, and so we could talk to Carrie too. Men's groups where young men, like Linda mentioned, are starting to get together and saying like, I want to be in the forefront of like destigmatizing mental health for men, Asian men in particular, because it is an issue that only you would be able to understand, right? Because of the way that you were brought up. To come to a space of therapy, a lot of people ask me this not only about just Asian men, but for like older generations too, that just grew up with so much stigma around therapy. Like, how do I get them into therapy? And my answer always is, maybe it doesn't have to start with therapy. That could be kind of the end goal if you want it to be, but healing doesn't always have to equate like you sit in front of a therapist. And how am I going to create a space where we can openly talk about things that are on your mind, what you're feeling, and if we're headed to the right place, that you're okay to shed a tear once in a while, right? Like, how do we get to that space together, our conversations that we can have as a community?
Oh, Carrie, would you raise your hand? Yes. That's Carrie. She's the founder of Asian Mental Health Project.
Love the reaction. But yes, please talk to her because she has resources around Asian men's.
All right.
Okay, we're going to go into celebration time. Joanna, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say, again, like, this is such a gift. So I will share, like, I've read the first chapter, and, like, you can already see, like, all my little paper flags. I'm excited for everybody to read this because as a person who also, like, really enjoys journaling and, like, art, they incorporate those things into working with this book, so it doesn't feel like you're just reading sad, depressing things the whole time, which, I love. And I think also, like, to your point about, like, what do we do? Like, I feel like I'm just gonna leave this book around. Like, hi, Dad. Maybe you'll find it later. Because I feel like there's just in the first chapter, I was like, there's so much that I'm really resonating with. Wow. And I think that's like, that's such a great point that, I think that's the beauty of any book, is that it travels to places you never think that it'll travel to. And so we have the great fortune to have you right here in front of us, but this is going to be such a gift to people like all over the country or all over the world, hopefully. So it's super exciting to be here with you. Then I did have to, because we're talking about food, I wanted to know, for each of you, what is your favorite food that you go to for either comfort, and then do you recommend like a local local LA restaurant.
The first thing that came to my mind was not exactly a comfort food, but it's just because I had it yesterday and it was like a celebratory food. And I love sushi. That's like the celebratory food. And so yesterday we had sushi with my family. And there is this old school sushi spot in Little Tokyo called Soo Jin, Gen, and it's my go-to spot. The tip is that you get there before 5 because they open at 5 and never go there on a weekend. Go there on a weekday before 5 so you can just be in line for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and right when they open, they will seat you. But if you get there when they open at 5, then you're going to be in line for an hour because now you have to wait for everyone that got in at 5 to finish their food. That's my tip.
What's my favorite food? I like food. So tteokbokki is Korean spicy rice cakes. Soo Jin knows that I have cut it down a lot. But when we first met, I was ordering it twice a week. And then whenever we go out to eat, I'll always order tteokbokki. So, it's not that old, but as I'm getting older, it is hard to digest spicy food. I have cut it down. So right now I've been trying to eat a little bit more healthy. Been trying to going into more like a plant-based diet. And I live in Torrance, and there's a new it's very plant-based, friendly, like fusion Asian restaurant called Lotus Asian Grill restaurant in Torrance. I recommend. They are so willing to make accommodations, which is not usual for Asian restaurants. You get what you get, right? In Asian restaurants. And it's immigrant owned, so that's like even adding that. So they're really, really willing to make anything plant-based, gluten-free. We actually cater from there for our holiday party for our staff, and we have so many different diet restriction, diet requirement, and then I was on the phone with them, like asking like every single one of them, and they fulfilled every single one of them. So I really recommend. Yeah.
Well, before everyone gets up, should we take a picture?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do it.